I was calmly driving on a long stretch of road, the kind that goes on forever. It was just another family road trip with my wife, Lisa, and our 2 daughters, Emily and Ava. The fall leaves were starting to turn orange, and the wind outside was whispering against the windows. The girls were busy in the back seat, quietly bickering over some toy, while Lisa sat beside me, staring out of the window with that vacant look she'd been wearing a lot lately. I had noticed it, but I didn't want to dig too deep. Sometimes, when you feel something's off, it's easier to pretend everything is fine. At least for a while. Then, out of nowhere, a black sedan swerved right in front of us, barely missing my bumper by inches. I slammed the brakes, my heart pounding. Before I could even register what was happening, the car screeched to a stop in front of us. A man, tall, bald, with fury in his eyes, jumped out, pointing a gun straight at me. "You bastard," he shouted, veins bulging out of his neck. "Get out of the car, all of you. I'm taking your wife." I froze. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard that my knuckles turned white. I could feel the heat rushing to my face, my pulse thudding in my ears. My first thought was my daughters. I turned to check on them. They were wide-eyed, mouths hanging open in shock. Lisa, on the other hand, had gone ghostly pale. Her eyes darted back and forth between me and the man, panic crawling across her face. "What the hell is going on, Lisa?" I muttered under my breath, still too shocked to move. "Get out of the car," the man yelled again, stepping closer. I could see the glint of the gun's barrel as he raised it higher. This was real. This wasn't a nightmare. But it sure as hell felt like one. I didn't know what was worse, this man standing here with a gun or the horrifying realization dawning on me, this was her lover. This was the man she'd been sneaking around with, lying to me about late nights at work or sudden girls' nights. "Matt," Lisa whispered, her voice shaking. "Please, don't make this worse." Make it worse? My head was spinning. My daughters. My wife. A gun. Her lover. How did we end up here? And what the hell had I done to deserve this? I slowly reached for the door handle, my mind scrambling for some kind of solution. My body moved on instinct, but inside, I was shattered. Every part of me wanted to grab Lisa by the arm and demand an explanation, right then and there. But with my daughters in the back seat and a gun pointed at my face, I didn't have time for that. I opened the door and stepped out into the chilly autumn air. This wasn't just the end of a road trip, it felt like the end of my entire life as I knew it. As I stepped out of the car, my legs felt like jelly. My eyes were glued to the man in front of me, his hand gripping the gun like it was an extension of his anger. My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, but I was paralyzed by shock. How could this be happening? And more importantly, why? The man, this stranger who seemed to know so much about me, was pacing like a wild animal. His breath came out in jagged bursts, and I could almost see the fury radiating off him. He took another step closer. "Tell them, Lisa," he spat. "Tell them who I am, or I swear, I'll do it myself." I turned to Lisa, my heart breaking with every second. She was still sitting in the car, her body frozen in place, her face drained of all color. She didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye. For a split second, I wondered if she was more afraid of me knowing the truth or the man with the gun. "Lisa!" I barked, louder than I intended, my voice cracking with the weight of betrayal. She slowly opened the door and stepped out, still avoiding my gaze. I could see her trembling, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the web of lies she had been spinning. I had trusted her for over a decade. We had built a life together, 2 kids, a home, memories. And now this? "Matt," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "I can explain." "Explain?" I cut her off, feeling the rage boil up inside me. "Explain what?" That you've been sneaking around with this piece of work while I'm at home with our daughters? That all those nights you said you were working late were lies? The man slammed the side of the car with his free hand, startling both of us. She's not yours anymore, he shouted, his voice shaking. She's mine. She's been mine for months. You had your chance. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Months? How long had this been going on? How many nights had I lain beside her, thinking everything was fine, while she was out with him? I could barely process it. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a painful rhythm that echoed the chaos around me. Matt, Lisa began, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears and the sound of my world shattering piece by piece. My daughters. Oh God, my daughters. They were still in the car, watching this entire nightmare unfold. Get back in the car, I said quietly, not even recognizing my own voice. We're leaving. The man stepped in front of me, his eyes blazing. You're not taking her anywhere. She's coming with me. Lisa's not yours anymore, man. Deal with it. Lisa just stood there, looking between us, tears welling in her eyes but no words coming out. She didn't even fight for me. She didn't even try to stop this madness. Is that true, Lisa? I asked, my voice raw. Is this really what you want? She finally looked at me, and in that moment, I could see the truth written all over her face. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even remorse. It was just apathy. Like she had already checked out of our marriage long ago and hadn't bothered to tell me. She hesitated, but then I saw it, her shoulders straightened, and she stood a little taller. Her lips tightened into a thin line. Yes, Matt. I'm leaving. I'm going with him. It felt like she had just punched me in the gut. Every emotion I had been holding back, the confusion, the anger, the sadness, all crashed over me at once. This wasn't some horrible mistake. This wasn't something we could fix. She had made her choice. You selfish bee, I stopped myself, catching my breath. I couldn't believe this. Not here. Not like this. Without another word, Lisa turned toward the man, and for a brief moment, they exchanged a look, a silent understanding between the two of them that made me sick to my stomach. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip apart the fabric of reality that had twisted my life into this surreal nightmare. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, watching as my wife, the mother of my children, walked away from me without a second thought. The man, satisfied with her answer, lowered the gun. Good choice, he muttered to her. Then he turned to me, smirking like he had won some kind of prize. She's mine now, Matt. Get used to it. Before I could respond, I heard a small voice from behind me. Emily. My 8-year-old daughter was standing there, holding her little sister Ava's hand, both of them wide-eyed and scared out of their minds. Daddy? Emily whispered, her voice trembling. What's happening? My heart shattered into a million pieces. How could I explain this to them? How could I ever make them understand what had just happened? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself for their sake. Get back in the car, girls. We're going home. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life was gone. The drive home was painfully quiet. The once lively chatter of my daughters, Emily and Ava, was replaced by silence. They sat huddled together in the back seat, their eyes wide and confused. I could feel their fear, their questions hanging heavy in the air. But what could I say? How do you explain to your children that their mother just walked away from all of you without a shred of remorse? Lisa's absence was deafening. I kept glancing at the empty seat beside me, half expecting her to be there, to crack some excuse, or maybe even apologize. But the truth had hit me hard back on that road. She was gone. Gone in every way that mattered. And I hadn't even seen it coming. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles pale, the cold reality still sinking in. That bastard, the man with the gun, had taken more than just my wife. He had taken the image of the life I thought I had, the family I thought we were. As the miles passed, my mind wandered to every little thing I had overlooked. The late nights at work. The girls' weekends. All those times she had been distant, barely there. I had convinced myself that it was just stress, that it was normal. I wanted to believe we were okay. But deep down, there had been signs. I had been too blind, or maybe too trusting, to see them. "Daddy," Emily's small voice broke the silence, pulling me back into the moment. "Where's Mommy? Why did she go with that man?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? "Mommy. Mommy's not going to be with us for a while," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "She needs some time away." "Did we do something wrong?" Ava, who was only 5, asked, her big brown eyes staring at me through the rearview mirror. My heart twisted. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. This has nothing to do with you." I wanted to pull over, to turn around and drive to wherever Lisa and that man had gone. I wanted to shake her, scream at her, demand answers. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. She had made her choice, and for whatever twisted reason, she had chosen him. I kept driving, each mile heavier than the last. The weight of everything, my daughter's innocence, the betrayal, the shattered future, was like an anvil on my chest. How was I going to explain this to their grandparents? To our friends? I could already hear the pitying voices, the awkward silences that would follow when people realized what had happened. But none of that compared to the sickening dread of knowing I had to face my daughters every day and somehow pretend that everything was going to be okay. When in reality, I had no idea how to fix this. No idea how to move forward. Later that night, after I had tucked the girls into bed and reassured them with promises I wasn't sure I could keep, I sat in the dark living room, alone with my thoughts. My mind kept replaying the events of the day like a broken record. The car swerving in front of us. The man's furious face. Lisa's cold, distant words. How had I let things get so bad? Was I just that blind, or had Lisa really become that good of a liar? My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me out of my thoughts. I reached for it, my heart skipping a beat. Maybe it was Lisa. Maybe she had come to her senses and was calling to apologize, to explain. But no. It wasn't her. It was a text from her mother. "Matt, where's Lisa? I've been trying to reach her. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What could I possibly say? I didn't even have the words to describe what had happened. How do you tell your mother-in-law that her daughter just walked out on her family for some lowlife who threatened you with a gun? Instead of responding, I turned the phone face down on the table. I couldn't deal with that right now. I couldn't deal with any of it. I leaned back on the couch, closing my eyes, trying to block out the flood of emotions crashing over me. Anger, sadness, betrayal, each one hitting me like a punch to the gut. I had never felt so powerless, so utterly defeated. The silence in the house was suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside felt like a reminder that Lisa was gone. And no matter how much I wanted to fix things, to make everything right for my daughters, I knew that some things were beyond repair. Hours passed, and I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to one thought: what now? How do you pick up the pieces after something like this? Lisa wasn't just my wife, she was the mother of my children. And now she was gone, leaving me to clean up the mess she had created. I stood up, pacing the room, feeling the weight of every step. Divorce. The word hung in the air like poison. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but now, it seemed inevitable. Lisa had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and there was no coming back from that. I could feel my pulse quickening, my chest tightening with rage. Not just at Lisa, but at myself, for being so blind, for letting things get to this point without even realizing it. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through old photos. Pictures of our family. The girls' birthday parties, vacations we'd taken, smiling holiday portraits. All those moments that felt so perfect at the time. Now they were just reminders of a lie I had been living. I tossed the phone aside, frustration boiling over. I couldn't stand it anymore. Everything had changed in the blink of an eye, and there was no going back. The only question left was, where do I go from here? The next few days were a blur. I was going through the motions, getting the girls ready for school, pretending everything was normal when, deep down, nothing was normal. The weight of Lisa's betrayal clung to me like a dark cloud, and I knew I couldn't escape it. I was sitting at the kitchen table one evening, staring blankly at the unpaid bills piling up in front of me, when my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Matt," a familiar voice whispered on the other end. It was Lisa. My grip on the phone tightened instantly, my heart racing. "You have some nerve calling me," I spat, standing up from the table. I couldn't help it, the rage I had been trying to suppress for days came bubbling up. "After everything you've done, you call me like it's nothing?" I need to talk to you," she said quietly, almost nervously. "Please, can we meet?" "Meet?" I barked. "What could you possibly have to say to me, Lisa? You already said everything back on that road when you walked away from your family." "Matt, please," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "It's not that simple." "Not that simple?" I repeated, my anger simmering just below the surface. "You destroyed everything. You left our daughters, Lisa. You left me for some psycho who pulls a gun on his lover's family in the middle of the road." There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, but no words came. She had no defense, no excuse that could make any of this better. But I agreed to meet her anyway. I needed to see her face one more time, to confront her about everything, to demand answers. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place we had once frequented on lazy Sunday mornings when we were still happy. Now, it felt foreign, like I was walking into the ruins of something long dead. Lisa was already sitting in the corner, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. She looked different. Her usual confidence was gone. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were hollow, almost lost. "Matt," she started, but I cut her off before she could even begin. "Why, Lisa?" I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. "Why him? Why now? Why this?" She looked down at her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know," she whispered. "Bullsh," I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. You know exactly why you did this. You don't accidentally have an affair for months. You don't just fall into bed with someone else. You planned this. You lied to me, to our daughters, to everyone." I was unhappy, she finally blurted out, her eyes meeting mine. I haven't been happy for a long time, Matt. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. I felt trapped, like I was drowning in this life. I stared at her, my chest tightening. "Trapped? You were trapped in a life we built together? Trapped by our daughters? By me?" "I didn't know how to tell you," she continued, her voice shaky. "I didn't know how to make you understand. And then I met him, and he made me feel alive again. I know it's wrong. I know I've hurt you and the girls. But I don't know how to fix it." I felt my stomach twist in disgust. "So, what? You're telling me this is my fault?" That I somehow pushed you into his arms? Into his bed? Her eyes flashed with guilt, and she shook her head quickly. No, no, that's not what I'm saying. I didn't know how else to deal with what I was feeling. I needed something different. Something more. More? I scoffed, unable to believe what I was hearing. You threw away everything we had for more? For some thrill with a man who literally pulled a gun on your family? Lisa's face paled, and she dropped her gaze. He wasn't supposed to do that. He wasn't. I didn't think it would get that far. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't know how to stop it? I repeated, incredulous. You didn't know how to stop yourself from destroying your family? I could feel the weight of her betrayal crushing down on me, and all the anger I had been holding back came spilling out. You chose this, Lisa. You chose him. You left me, you left our daughters, for what? For some temporary escape? You could have talked to me. We could have worked through this together. But no, you decided to take the coward's way out. She was crying now, her shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her face. But it did nothing for me. I couldn't find it in me to care about her tears. Not anymore. What do you want from me, Lisa? I asked, my voice cold. Why are you here? Because if you're hoping for forgiveness, you're not getting it. I just wanted to explain. She choked out, wiping at her eyes. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't about hating you. I still care about you and the girls. But I'm not coming back. I can't. It's too late. I stared at her for a long moment, my heart a mixture of numbness and fury. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to rewind time and erase everything that had happened. But none of that was possible. This was my reality now. She had made her choice, and there was no going back. So, that's it? I asked bitterly. You're just gone. She nodded, her lips trembling. I'm sorry, Matt. I really am. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a screech. No, Lisa. You're not sorry. Not yet. But you will be. And with that, I walked out of the cafe, leaving her sitting there, a broken shell of the woman I had once loved. The woman who had torn my life apart. I left the cafe without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold evening air hit me as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to numb the burning anger inside. Lisa's words replayed in my mind over and over, her excuses, her half-hearted apologies. She wasn't coming back. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, part of me still struggled to accept it. As I drove back home, the streetlights passing in a blur, I realized the full weight of what she had done. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. Lisa had chosen to leave. She had chosen to abandon our family for some fleeting thrill, some selfish desire to feel alive. I wasn't even sure who she was anymore. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger who could justify tearing apart everything we had built together. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it always had, warm lights glowing from the windows, the faint outline of the girls' toys scattered across the yard. But everything inside felt different now, hollow, like a shell of the life we once had. I walked inside and found the girls already asleep. My mother had been helping out with them ever since the incident on the road. She had questions, of course, but I had brushed her off for now. I wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. I stood at the doorway to their room, watching them sleep peacefully, unaware of the storm that had swept through their lives. Emily was clutching her favorite stuffed animal, and Ava had kicked off her blanket, as usual. They were my world now. I had to hold it together for them. I quietly closed the door and sat on the couch in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. I felt empty. There was no rage left, no sadness, just a deep, crushing exhaustion. How was I supposed to do this alone? How was I going to explain to them that their mother had left us for good? The thought of telling them the truth broke something inside me. How do you tell your children that their mother chose someone else over them? Over us? I wasn't sure I had the strength for that conversation. But sooner or later, they would ask. And when that time came, I'd have to be ready. The next few days were a blur of routines, school drop-offs, work, dinners. I tried to keep everything as normal as possible for the girls. But every moment was a reminder of the gaping hole Lisa had left behind. Then one afternoon, as I was picking the girls up from school, Emily tugged on my sleeve, her face full of questions she hadn't dared to ask until now. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" I froze, feeling the weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had known this was coming, but I wasn't ready. How could I ever be ready? I knelt down to her level, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily, sweetheart. Mommy's not coming back home. She's staying away for a while." Her brow furrowed, confusion written all over her face. But why? Did she do something bad? I hesitated, searching for the right words, but how could I explain something so complicated to an 8-year-old? "No, Emily. It's not because of you or Ava. Mommy she needed to be somewhere else right now." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked down at the ground, her small shoulders slumping. "I miss her," she whispered. My heart shattered all over again. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "I know, sweetheart. I miss her too." And I did. As angry as I was, as much as I despised what Lisa had done, there was still a part of me that missed her, the person she used to be, the family we used to have. Ava, who had been listening quietly, looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy mad at us?" I could barely keep it together. "No, Ava. Mommy's not mad at you. She loves you both very much. This isn't your fault, okay?" They nodded, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. No matter what I said, nothing would make this better. Nothing could fill the void that Lisa had left behind. That night, after putting the girls to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the piles of paperwork in front of me. Bills, legal documents, and divorce papers. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but it was inevitable. Lisa wasn't coming back, and even if she did, there was nothing left between us worth saving. The love we once had was gone, replaced by betrayal and anger. I reached for the pen, my hand trembling slightly as I signed my name on the dotted line. I wasn't just ending a marriage, I was ending a part of my life that I had thought would last forever. It felt like I was closing the door on something I wasn't ready to let go of. But what choice did I have? In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on everything. The marriage, the betrayal, the way it had all fallen apart so suddenly. I had spent so long blaming Lisa, hating her for what she had done, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I could learn from it all. Life doesn't always turn out the way you plan. People change, and sometimes, those changes rip them away from you in ways you could never imagine. But as painful as it was, I realized something important: I couldn't control what Lisa had done. I couldn't change her choices. But I could control what happened next. I had 2 beautiful daughters who needed me, and I wasn't going to let Lisa's betrayal define their lives, or mine. We would move forward, one day at a time. And while I couldn't erase the pain, I could rebuild from the ashes. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Not better, not healed, but determined. I had been broken, but I wasn't destroyed. Life would go on, and so would I. For Emily, for Ava, and for myself. The following weeks passed in a strange blur of routine and emotion. Each day felt like a battle, holding it together for the girls while quietly dealing with the broken pieces of my own heart. Life, however, doesn't slow down when you're broken. Work demanded attention, the house needed upkeep, and Emily and Ava's lives continued on with school, friends, and their endless energy. I was sitting at the breakfast table one morning, sipping coffee, lost in thought when Emily broke the silence. "Daddy, are you happy?" Her question blindsided me. Happy? I hadn't even considered what that word meant for a while now. Happiness had been swallowed by survival, just getting through each day without letting the sadness consume me. "I don't know, Emily," I answered truthfully, putting my mug down. "But I'm working on it." She tilted her head, looking wise beyond her years. "You don't have to pretend, you know. It's okay if you're sad sometimes." Hearing those words from my 8-year-old daughter hit me hard. I realized how much she was absorbing, how much she was watching and understanding even without fully knowing the details of what had happened. She wasn't a little kid anymore. She felt the absence of her mother, the tension in the air, the weight of the changes. "I am sad sometimes," I admitted, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "But I'm also okay. And I'll always be okay as long as I have you and Ava." Her small smile gave me strength. She leaned in to hug me tightly, and I held her close. For a moment, everything felt a little lighter. That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, I found myself standing in front of Lisa's closet. Most of her things were still there, untouched since she had left. I had avoided this space, hoping that by not confronting it, I could pretend things weren't as bad as they were. But the divorce papers had been signed. There was no more pretending. With a deep breath, I opened the closet door. Her clothes hung neatly, untouched, as if she might walk in any minute and grab something for work. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. Each piece of fabric felt like a piece of her lingering in the house, a ghost that haunted every corner of my mind. I pulled down a box from the top shelf. Inside were mementos of our life together, photos, postcards from vacations we'd taken, little trinkets that once meant everything to us. Now, they felt like relics from a time that didn't belong to me anymore. I sifted through the memories, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and bitterness. How could something that seemed so solid crumble so easily? One photo caught my eye. It was of us at the beach, arms wrapped around each other, the girls laughing in the background as they played in the sand. We had looked so happy, so complete. It felt like looking at strangers now. A different version of me and Lisa, people who no longer existed. I put the photo down and closed the box. I couldn't dwell on the past any longer. It was time to let go. The next day, I made the decision to start clearing out Lisa's things. It wasn't out of anger, it was out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in a house full of reminders of what used to be. If I was going to move forward, I needed to create a space that felt like mine, like the girls. Our home. I packed her clothes into boxes, folded neatly but with a finality that felt strange. As I worked, I kept expecting to feel more sadness, more rage, but instead, there was a sense of calm. This was the first step in reclaiming my life. When I had finished, I looked around the room. It felt different, emptier, yes, but also lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I wasn't erasing Lisa from my life, but I was making room for something new. Something that was just for me and the girls. A few days later, I got a message from Lisa. Just a simple text, "I want to see the girls." I stared at the screen, feeling the old anger flare up again. The nerve she had, to just waltz back in whenever it suited her, after all she'd put us through. But the girls deserved a relationship with their mother, no matter how much I despised what she had done. After a long pause, I typed back, "Fine. This weekend." The next few days were a mess of emotions. I dreaded seeing her again, dreaded having to face her and deal with whatever fake smile she would bring. But I couldn't let my own feelings get in the way of what was best for the girls. When the weekend came, Lisa showed up at the door. The moment I opened it, I felt a knot form in my stomach. She looked different, almost like the Lisa I once knew, but colder, more distant. Her eyes searched mine for a moment, but I gave her nothing. The girls ran to her, hugging her tightly, their innocent joy filling the room. I stood back, watching them, feeling a strange sense of detachment. This was the woman who had wrecked our lives, but to them, she was still mommy. And that was a truth I couldn't change, no matter how much I wanted to. "Hi, Matt," she said, her voice cautious. "Thanks for letting me come." I nodded, keeping it short. "It's for the girls." She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I know." The rest of the visit was uneventful. Lisa played with the girls, laughing and smiling, while I stayed in the background, observing. It was strange, seeing her so close yet feeling so far removed from her. The love I had once felt for her was buried under layers of hurt, and I wasn't sure it would ever resurface. When it was time for her to leave, the girls clung to her, asking when they would see her again. Lisa promised she'd come back soon, giving me a quick glance before heading out the door. As soon as she was gone, the tension in the house lifted. I tucked the girls into bed that night, listening to their stories about their day with mommy. They didn't see the cracks in our family yet. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe I could shield them from it just a little longer. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this was my life now. There would be no happy reunion, no mending of what was broken. Lisa and I were done. But I wasn't done living. I had Emily and Ava, and I had myself. And that was enough. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't over it, not by a long shot. But I was moving forward, one step at a time. And in the end, that was all I could do. The weeks that followed Lisa's visit were calmer than I expected. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a quieter but still persistent ache. Life had settled into a new routine, one that felt more like mine, like ours, me and the girls. I had stopped waiting for Lisa to show up or call unexpectedly. She had faded into the background, a part of the past, only stepping in for brief visits with the kids. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, I sat down in the living room with a glass of whiskey, letting the quiet of the house seep into my bones. I had been thinking a lot about the future, what it would look like now that everything had changed. Divorce was final. Lisa was gone, but I was still here, and the weight of starting over lingered. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts, stopping at a name I hadn't dialed in a long time, James. My best friend since college. He'd been calling and texting, trying to be there for me through all of this, but I had shut him out. I didn't know how to explain everything, didn't want to relive it. But tonight, for some reason, I felt like I needed to reach out. Before I could second guess it, I hit call. "Matt?" James' voice answered after a few rings, a mix of surprise and relief in his tone. "Man, it's good to hear from you." "Hey, James," I said, my voice rough from disuse. "Sorry I've been distant." "It's all good," he replied, understanding. "I figured you'd call when you were ready. How are you holding up?" I let out a long sigh, staring at the ceiling. "It's been rough. But I'm getting through it. Look, I know you probably don't want to talk about it all, but I've been worried about you. You don't have to do this alone, you know. Let me be there for you, man." His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I hadn't let anyone in, not James, not my family. I had been trying to carry the weight of everything by myself. But maybe it was time to let someone help. "Yeah," I muttered, feeling a lump in my throat. "I appreciate that. I do. I've just been trying to keep it together for the girls, you know? It's harder than I thought." "I can't imagine, man," James said, his voice softening. "But you're strong. I know you'll get through this." We talked for another hour, about everything and nothing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a little lighter. I realized then how much I had missed having someone to talk to, someone who knew me before all of this. James didn't push me to talk about Lisa or the divorce. He just listened, and that was enough. A few days later, the girls and I decided to take a spontaneous trip to the local park. The fall weather was perfect, crisp air, golden leaves, and the kind of sun that warmed without overwhelming. Emily and Ava ran ahead of me, giggling as they raced toward the playground. Their laughter filled the space around me, a reminder that life still had joy in it, even if it was different now. I watched them climb the jungle gym, my heart swelling with pride. They had been so strong through all of this, stronger than I had expected. Kids are resilient in ways adults often forget. They had their moments of asking for mommy, of wondering when she'd come back, but they were adapting. They were learning to live in this new normal, just like I was. As I sat on a bench, sipping from a thermos of coffee, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a text from Lisa. "Can we talk?" My jaw clenched involuntarily. I stared at the message for a long moment, considering whether to respond. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to hear more excuses, more justifications for why she had torn our family apart. But something in me knew this wasn't going away. No matter how much I wanted to forget about her, Lisa would always be tied to my life because of the girls. "About what?" I typed back, keeping it short. Her reply came almost immediately, "About the girls. About us." Us. The word hung in the air like a bitter aftertaste. There was no us anymore. Not in the way she meant, anyway. "There is no us," I responded flatly. "If it's about the girls, we can talk. Otherwise, there's nothing left to say." I shoved the phone back into my pocket, trying to shake off the frustration building in my chest. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I wanted to move on, to find peace. But Lisa had a way of reopening old wounds, and I wasn't sure how to protect myself from it. I watched Emily and Ava swing higher and higher, their carefree laughter filling the air, and I reminded myself that this was what mattered now. Not Lisa. Not the past. But these moments with my daughters, the future I was building for them. Later that evening, after the girls were in bed, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Lisa. "I want to apologize." I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to just delete it, to shut her out and keep moving forward without looking back. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, was curious. What could she possibly say now that would change anything? I took a deep breath and typed back, "Fine. Talk." A minute later, my phone rang. I hesitated for a second, then answered. "Matt," Lisa's voice came through, softer than I remembered. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond immediately. I waited, letting the silence stretch. "I know I hurt you," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I know I hurt the girls, and I can't undo that. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I didn't handle things the way I should have. I was selfish, and I didn't think about how much damage I was causing." I leaned back in my chair, the familiar ache rising in my chest. "Yeah, you didn't," I said quietly. "You destroyed everything, Lisa." "I know," she whispered. "And I'll live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But I want to do better now, for the girls. I want to be there for them, and I want to figure out how we can co-parent in a way that's best for them." I sighed, rubbing my temples. This was what I had wanted to hear, but it didn't take away the pain. It didn't change the fact that she had already broken us. "We'll figure it out," I said, my voice flat. "But don't expect anything more from me." We're not fixing this, Lisa. We're done. I understand, she said, a long pause following. I'm sorry, Matt. The call ended, and I sat there in the quiet for a long time, feeling a mix of anger, relief, and sadness. Her apology didn't fix anything, but it was something. Maybe it was the first step toward a new kind of peace, one where we could both move forward without the weight of the past hanging over us. And that night, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. The days after Lisa's apology were different. Not easier, but different. I no longer felt the constant, gnawing weight of unresolved anger pulling at me. There was still pain, sure, but it was like a bruise rather than a gaping wound. The calls and texts with Lisa had become more focused on the girls and less about the past. It was businesslike, and that's how I wanted it. No more digging through old wounds, no more trying to find meaning in a situation that was meaningless. One Saturday afternoon, I took the girls to the local ice cream parlor. It had become a bit of a tradition after everything fell apart. Emily and Ava were running ahead of me, giggling and jostling each other to get to the door first, their energy infectious. They'd been my anchor through all of this. No matter how bad things got, no matter how empty I felt, they reminded me there was still joy to be found, still life to be lived. As we sat down with our ice cream, Ava, her mouth covered in chocolate, looked up at me. "Daddy, why don't we see Mommy more? She said she'd come last week, but she didn't." That familiar knot formed in my stomach. I took a breath, trying to find the words. She's trying, sweetie. Sometimes things come up, and she can't make it, but she loves you both very much." It was the same lie I told myself whenever Lisa canceled a visit or sent another vague excuse. But I wasn't ready to tear that illusion away from the girls. They needed something to hold on to. Emily, ever the more observant one, stayed quiet. She didn't ask as many questions as Ava did, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She wasn't naive. She knew more than I gave her credit for. As we finished our ice cream and headed to the park, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and saw Lisa's name. "Can we meet? There's something important I need to talk about." I hesitated. Every time she reached out, it stirred something in me, a mix of frustration, anger, and, to my surprise, a hint of curiosity. What could she possibly have left to say? Still, for the girl's sake, I needed to keep the lines of communication open. "Fine. Tomorrow afternoon." The next day, I met Lisa at the same cafe where we had confronted each other weeks ago. As I sat across from her, I realized something had changed. She looked different. Not the cold, detached version of her I had seen before. There was something softer about her now, a fragility I hadn't noticed in a long time. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice quieter than usual. I didn't know how else to do this. I frowned, unsure of what she was getting at. "What's this about, Lisa? You said it was important." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she held her coffee cup. "I know I've messed up. I know I can't fix what I've broken, and I don't expect you to forgive me for that. But I need to tell you the truth about something I've been hiding, something I wasn't honest about during our marriage." I leaned back in my chair, feeling my pulse quicken. After everything that had come out, the affair, the lies, what more could there possibly be? "Matt, I wasn't just unhappy with us. I was unhappy with myself. I've been seeing someone professional, a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did." And, she hesitated, her eyes welling up. "I realized something. I'm not coming back because I don't want to. Not just because of the affair, but because I'm not the person I thought I was. I'm not the person you thought I was." I stared at her, trying to piece together what she was saying. "What do you mean? You're not the person I thought you were?" She bit her lip, tears now spilling freely down her cheeks. "I'm leaving, Matt. Really leaving. Not just from you, but from the girls too. I've made the decision to go away for a while, maybe a long while. I need to figure out who I am without all of this. I'm not capable of being a mother right now, not like I should be. I need to find myself, and I can't do that if I'm here, pretending." I sat there, frozen. Her words hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just talking about leaving me, she was talking about abandoning the girls. Abandoning her role as their mother. I couldn't comprehend it. How could someone just walk away like that? "You're leaving the girls?" I whispered, the shock making my voice unsteady. "You're just going to abandon them?" Her face crumpled, and she covered it with her hands. "I know how awful this sounds. I know. But I can't be what they need. Not right now. Maybe not ever." For a moment, the world stopped. The air in the cafe felt thick, suffocating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lisa, who had always seemed like such a devoted mother, was saying she couldn't handle it anymore. That she wasn't capable of being there for the two little girls who adored her. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor loudly, causing a few people to glance over. But I didn't care. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, my voice hard. "But I'll tell you this, I don't care what your reasons are. You don't get to just walk away from your children. You don't get to make that choice." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "Matt, I'm broken. I can't do this." I shook my head, disbelief turning to anger. "No. You're weak. And you're selfish." Without waiting for her to respond, I turned and walked out, the weight of her confession crashing down on me. Lisa had betrayed me in more ways than I could count, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She was willing to leave our daughters behind, not just me. Later that night, as I sat in the quiet of the house, I realized something. For all the pain Lisa had caused, for all the betrayal and heartbreak, her leaving was no longer the worst part. The worst part was that I had clung to the idea of who she used to be, who I thought she was. Now, I knew the truth. The woman I had loved was gone, maybe never really there. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I still had the most important thing, my daughters. They needed me, and I would be there for them. I wasn't just surviving this anymore. I was moving forward, rebuilding my life without her. That night, as I kissed Emily and Ava goodnight, I made a promise to myself, I would raise them with all the love they deserved. I would never let them feel abandoned. Lisa may have walked away, but I was still here. And I always would be. This was the turning point. Not the end, but a new beginning. A life without Lisa, yes, but a life filled with love, resilience, and a future I could build with my daughters. We would be okay. I would be okay. I closed the door to their room, the sound of their soft breathing filling the hallway. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace.